Our saga, Faces of the Family, starts here at this celebration of the 24th wedding anniversary of the two heads of this extended family. But before we join them at their party, let's put some names to the faces. That's Simon and Mark, two of the sons of Joe Benjamin, the patriarch.
That's Pauline. There she is.
Over there, Joe's second wife, Pauline Crabbe, the matriarch.
How are you?
This is Biff, her son by a former husband. And that's Mandy, Biff's wife, mother of their 3 children. Tricia, she's a close friend of the family. And that's Pauline's granddaughter, Louise. In the middle there's Adam, Joe's youngest son. And this is Chris, Louise's partner.
How are you?
Now here's Jill, Joe's daughter-in-law. And this is Arnold, a very good neighbour, and his enthusiastically affectionate son, Simon. There's nothing extraordinary about this family, except when you come to think of it, all families are extraordinary in the complex ways they arrange their affairs in order to survive. You're very welcome to join the party as we follow the threads of their lives in 6 episodes of our family saga, Faces of the Family.
Thank you. Stand up. I want to say thank you for coming here today, but I want also to say that the kids were all here, and thank goodness we've got rid of them.
No shame.
So that none of them can scream when I'm talking. Now, we are an unusual family, but a typical one. And in a way, Joe and I think, have set new trends for the family, because the family is changing. The nuclear family is now no longer sort of in favour, and we have to think of the extended family and how that's going to work. And I think we're doing it very well. Joe and I set new trends when we married 24 years ago today. We've learnt things from each other. We've suffered the pain and the pleasures of being parents. You have suffered the pains and pleasures of being children to parents like Joe and I. We're step-parents as well, and we've learnt an enormous amount from all of you. And I'm just so grateful to you for being here and just for being you.
Well said, Mum.
Why do you think that the family is under attack at the minute? I mean, it's really getting it right in the neck, isn't it? What is it? I mean, it's really appalling.
I think largely it's that the people see society. I mean, despite Margaret Thatcher saying there is no such thing as society, society has survived that onslaught.
Yeah.
And her successors see that society is not how they remember it in their childhood and so forth, and look for something to blame. Now the family has, as you have said, has changed dramatically since the government were children, since we were children, and therefore it's an easy scapegoat rather than blaming anything else that they may be responsible for.
But also, the government see the new family, which is establishing itself now as an extended family with step-parents and step-children and the sort of mingling together. The government see it as a threat because it's different, and anything that's different is a threat. And I mean, basically, the family, to me, is just as strong as it was 50 years ago.
It seems commonplace now to come across children who come from backgrounds which are not, again, the traditional, the normal, who have suffered the breakup of parents, perhaps. And given the huge range of problems that we see, we often find it quite surprising that the children are as well adjusted, as it were, as they appear. So, as I say, we see this huge range of problems, and we learn from children about all the difficulties that they seem to face.
Well, I feel very much, that the new parents, the new family, the new extended family, we've got to have a very positive attitude about it, because it's happening, it's going to happen in the future. I mean, it's going to develop, it's going to be there. We can't pretend that it'll just sort of go away or lessen or anything, because the changes have taken place and we are now faced with it. And if one doesn't have a positive attitude and to say, well, what's good about it? What can we learn from each other? And, you know, when we look at our family and what's happened to us, the enormous size of the family, we have gained so much from the intermingling. My goodness, what I have learnt from my stepchildren is just one part of it. But they might have learnt something from me. I rather hope they have.
I bet they have. They're not going to admit it.
But there has been this sort of there's been this interchange that we have given each other. And I mean, it is rather like sort of immigration, that, you know, there are positive sides to the culture coming into the country and adding to the culture that is already there.
Well, the party was good, wasn't it? Your 24th wedding anniversary.
Lovely.
But are you glad, really glad you met Joe, so that you got this permanent...
Oh, definitely. I knew when I married Joe that I was marrying a grown-up. And before, I'd only married boys. I mean, I was a late developer anyway, otherwise I'd never have made the relationship with Joe, but I was in my 50s, and it just seemed to be right. We seemed to understand what we were saying behind what we were saying, if you know what I mean. And it worked.
So now, how difficult is it for you with Joe with Parkinson's?
I hate it for him more than I hate it for me. I mean, I hate it anyway, but it is very hard for him. The thing that I get most pride out of is the positive approach that Joe has. He is still in there working, and he is just getting on with it. And in a way that takes off the worst of the horror, because it is horrid.
But then he had to face the disaster of your stroke too.
Yes, and so did I. It was like a bereavement, really, to lose my left side. And I had to work through it. And the boys helped me a lot. When I came home from hospital, after being a month there, the boys were very much around, all four of them. They sort of came and visited frequently. And once they'd got used to the fact that I had to do things for myself in order to be myself, to come back to being myself again. And I can remember the first time that I was out of a wheelchair and was doing a 50-yard walk, and we were in Regency Square, and I was walking down the road towards the sea, and I said to them, now don't hang around, walk in front of me, pretend I'm not here, don't even look back at me. And I started to walk down, and a couple of people came behind me, and I could hear them saying, oh, those three men, leaving that poor old lady to struggle down on her own.
And they were there.
And they were there.
Have you, as you got older, desperately wanted not to be at all relying on your family for help?
We moved out of London partly because we didn't want to have people watching us grow old and doing things for us. And in a way, I think it was right.
Mm. But you've moved away from your family, the support group that could have been around. I mean, did it hurt their feelings at all, or were they...
I think there were sort of mixed feelings. I think there was a feeling, first of all, of very slight relief, very slight, kept well under, and I think that with the relief was the sadness.
When you were a young girl, Was family the real aim of your life? To be a mother, to be a wife and mother?
Absolutely. I grew up in a large family, and I think I had the ideal childhood. 2 loving parents, very concerned about their family, very anxious in a way about us, and yet giving us a little bit of sort of liberation, not watching us too much. And I loved it. I loved the family. I felt, you know, cuddled and warm. And I think I always wanted that to be that myself. I mean, I was very fond of my grandmother. I just liked the way that she was, a very outspoken old lady, very firm about some things and very...
soft as anything
yes,
about
that's
others.
right, soft-centred.
Yes, I want to be like that.
Yeah.
I try to be like that.
Well,
now, as a grandma, do you love it? I mean, because I find being a grandma is my second chance at being a mother, trying to perfect what I had been before. I also find that it's this delicious love, I call it, you know, where it's love, but with freedom and not total responsibility, because they're back to the parents, aren't they?
Yes.
Do you feel this as a grandma?
Oh, I have had great joy at being a grandmother. All the things that I didn't do as a mother, I can now do as a grandmother. And that means that my children have missed out on the things that I can do. And it's given me enormous joy to be so close to my grandchildren. And in a way to have 2 sets of grandchildren, you know, a set that are grown up and a set that are tinies.
Because, in fact, you've got your step-grandchildren.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes, indeed.
But when you first came to England, which was in 1919, right?
Yes.
Rich father, so fairly protected, you know, you came to a quite, you know, into a
Oh,
your own
yes.
good little world.
Yes.
You were a rarity being black in England at that time.
Yes, we were novelty.
Did you feel prejudice at that time towards you?
Not really. I don't think, I can't remember feeling prejudice when we first came. And certainly, you know, there were so few black people around. I never remember actually seeing any blacks around in the area that we lived in, and my sisters and I were the only black children at school, and my brothers were the only black children in their school. And I think that in a way we just didn't come up against prejudice.
But then you married a white man.
Yes.
And did you not think of the repercussions of that? Were you not worried about a mixed marriage?
No, never worried me at all about that. I just, you see, we are very, very mixed in Jamaica. You know, my parentage way back is Greek, Jewish, Portuguese, African Negro, of course, first. And it's a whole sort of mixture. So the mixture seemed to me quite sort of normal to, you know, why not?
But by the 50s, you must have been aware then of a cold wind.
Oh, definitely. The 50s were when I became a born-again black, because I wanted to be black.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing of the 50s and 60s, it was a very, very difficult time for blacks in this country. And in fact, I in between the social work jobs that I did, I went and worked for the Race Relations Board because I wanted to be known and seen as a black. I'd been the first black woman magistrate in the country, and I just wanted that. I wanted to see black people in authority as well as being sort of intermingling with everybody. I mean, integration has never meant for me losing the feeling about black. It's meant just being yourself.
Absolutely. The right to be yourself
Yes,
is
the right to be
is
yourself.
what it is, isn't it? But by the time Biff, your son, who is black,
Yes.
from a black father, in
Yes.
fact, that's your second marriage,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Now, were you worried when he wanted to marry a white girl because of more difficult times?
No, again,
No.
not really. And also I had confidence in Biff's common sense and in his ability to be himself. And it worked.
Now, you were very interested in the subject of single parenting. I mean, you were part of the early formation of the Council for the Unmarried Mother and Her Child in the 50s.
Yes.
Well, I was full of admiration for you, to tell you the truth, in the 50s, because you were black, and there you were in public life.
Oh, yes, I've always been interested in single parents, and I suppose because I was a single parent with the sort of self-interest, I was very concerned about them. And I just thought that they had such a raw deal. You know, it was just such a difficult thing to work in, such a difficult cause to plead for and to be allowed to have a voice. And it was one of the things that I fought very hard for.
I mean, you were fighting for yourself because you were a single parent. Your marriage broke down just after the war.
Yes, well, yes, because we were just not the same people. We'd been more or less separated on and off, mostly off, for almost 6 years. And when Jeff came back, we were strangers.
But at that time, divorce wasn't very common. And I'm wondering, was that a time of dismay for you or even shame for you? Because people hated divorce.
I think it was more anger than shame. It was anger at the injustices. You couldn't, in fact, do things like buy anything on the, what was called the never hire purchase in those days. You couldn't sign that piece of paper to do that. You couldn't take a flat on your own. Local authority flats could never be registered in your name. And one of the things that I fought for single mothers was to get municipal housing available to them in their own right. And this is what angers me now, with the government saying, oh, women, you know, if they want a council flat, they'll sort of have a child in order to get the council flat. This is absolute nonsense.
Yes, can you ever imagine anyone feeling that?
No way. I mean, the horror, the burdens that single mothers have, isolation, poverty, and the burden of being mother and father. And that is something that they are going to go through. And how could any of them who think ahead or who have counselling, which I've always believed in, you know, where one points out these things to them, how could they ever get into that situation of their own, you know, in order to get a council flat?
But how did you cope, Pauline, with your isolation as a single mother?
Coming from a large family, you know, brothers and sisters, there were 6 siblings, and they were all very supportive to me. And I found it a tremendous help. And Biff had lots of role models, male role models, that were not husbands or lovers, but, you know, it just made all the difference.
When you were a very young girl, all you wanted to be was a wife and mother. But by the time you'd attained that, you'd become divorced, and you tasted a freedom you'd never expected because you'd started to work.
That was the war, really.
Yes.
Yes.
The war did it to a lot of women.
That's right. Suddenly aware that you could take responsibility. No, I married, I think it's always said that Jamaicans have a lot of the Victorian values, and the Victorian values and attitudes were that you should marry, and once you're married, you live happily ever after. You don't have any breakdowns or anything like that. And I think I felt exactly the same as that there was the sort of magic wand that waved over you. The moment you were married, all your troubles were over. And I believed that, and I believed that husbands should make the decision about where you lived and what you did. And then after the war, I felt that I was one of those people where if I were married, the husband could make the big decisions, like whether we should or not we should go to war, whether or not we should sort of do one thing or the other. But I would make the little decisions like where the children go to school and, you know, all the sort of tiny things that don't matter, but in fact really matter very much. And it was me getting control of myself. And I really got a lot out of going to work. I never wanted, I wanted to go on working. I never wanted to go back to total domesticity. Not that I despise it, but I just never wanted it.
So you must sympathise greatly with Jill, your stepdaughter-in-law, because she wants to have babies and she wants to work, but it's a very heavy load for someone.
I think it is extremely hard. I have been lucky, because although I've had the sort of job that drained me when I was doing it, I have always been able to leave it behind. I have never taken it home with me. The cut-off is painful, but you have to do it. And you have to be like that if you are going to have a career and be a mother.
It's a very hard juggling act that has to go on at this point.
Yes, it
for
is.
women. And for a man, because it can be a man who does it. Or do you think you'd be so possessive as a mother that you wouldn't let a man do it?
Oh, I've had to. I've had to see Joe mother his sons, and I call him Father Hen sometimes because he has that mothering quality that I've been quite envious of it in a way. But, you know, we've shared the mothering. He's allowed me to share the mothering of my stepchildren, although I don't think of myself as a mother, but I as their mother, I mean. I think of myself as their friend.
Why do you think the family is being bombarded at the moment? I mean, why is it being given such a bad name?
The nuclear family is definitely threatened, but I think that the extended family is soon to become the norm. And it is, I think it's very exciting. I'm glad I lived to see it. In a way, it's the commitment of marriage that's important, isn't it? And I think that that is still happening, even though some of the commitments have been broken on the way. And one is ashamed of that. In a way, I feel not so much ashamed as regretful, because I would have wanted to have had a marriage as I've had 24 years with Joe. I would have wanted to have had that from the beginning. But, you know, it wasn't me, and I've been lucky to get it in the end.
But do you think, you know, the idea of going back to the kind of Horlicks happy family of the 50s, you know, before divorce was made easy?
Society evolves. Without an authoritarian regime, you can't have a revolution in society, which is what this government is wanting. A backwards revolution, admittedly,
But the one thing that we know is that you can't ever really go back. If you go back, it's different. It's not the way it was. So there isn't any point in looking backwards. You've always got to be looking forwards the whole time.
Sons and stepsons are the subject for next Friday's Faces of the Family at 8 o'clock. Well, there's a booklet available which looks at the family and society today. If you'd like a copy, please send a cheque or postal order for £2.50 payable to Channel 4 to Faces of the Family, PO Box 4000, London W3 6XJ.